Welcome to the Property Strategy Podcast. Today I am sitting down with very special guest. We have Madeleine Roberts of MR Advocacy. Madeleine, so great to have you in the studio. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me.
Really looking forward to this. Guys, I'm sure many people have seen Madeleine on various social media platforms, but Maddie, where may people have seen you, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the business.
Yeah, sure. So I do have a lot of presence on social media. My business was probably built off the back of social media accidentally. So on TikTok, I have about 21,000 followers. On Instagram, I have, I think 8,000. No, I think I'm nearly 10. No, you're gonna have to leave it at that. I don't know. Somewhere like
cool.
that, something like that. And I'm also lucky enough to regularly be featured in a lot of Herald Sun articles and realestate.com.au news. So that's
probably
great.
where people would have seen you.
Perhaps, yes. But as I was saying, my business has really been built off the back of social media. So I started posting on TikTok just a little bit of property related content a couple of years ago now. And I did have a very strong real estate background, which helped, but I had no intention of what I was going to do with that or where it was going to go. And people were reaching out to me in my DM saying, can you buy us property as our buyer's advocate? And
before you were a BA?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so at the time I was working part-time as a valuer and I had 2 small children and I was like, oh no, I'm way too busy for that. So I was like, oh, no chance. And then I think my mum was like, maybe you should just try it. I was like, maybe I should. And then I just lent into it and it's been wildly successful. So it's been really good.
Wow. Okay. So the backstory to that was in property valuations.
So it's a further backstory. I have been in real estate for many, many years. I started as a weekend receptionist when I was 14.
Okay.
I left school when I was like 15, 16. Started working full-time in real estate when I was 17. I did get into Deakin University to become a valuer in my early 20s. But at the time, I actually had a couple of mortgages. And I didn't have family to lean on in terms of a place to live.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't have somewhere to live, but my mum moved to Queensland. It just wasn't that way. I worked full-time and I had to pay mortgages. So study was not an option. But I linked up with a valuer and I started doing admin work. This is after a few years off on maternity leave. Okay. And then I was like, I'm gonna complete those studies. So one thing led to another. I was working in valuations, really enjoying it. And then I pivoted into buyer's advocacy, which has been amazing.
Well, you've mentioned something that's already triggered a thought process for me. You mentioned that, I mean, you're wildly young at this point in time. You said, I've got mortgages. Yeah. Can we touch on that? Like I always like to ask guests, what was the very first acquisition that you made? Maybe you could share, if you don't mind, how old you were and some rough numbers behind it. Do you still own it? What's it worth today?
Yeah. So my first property I purchased, I was 18. And this was what? I don't know. I didn't want to do the maths on it. Maybe like 12 or so years ago, 13 years ago. So there was little knowledge. You know, there wasn't social media. There was far less of, borderless investing, things like that. So the idea was buy what you can afford close to you. So at the time, I was living in Dramana in Safety Beach on the Mornington Peninsula. And what I could afford was in Rosebud. So at the time, no one wanted to live in Rosebud. It was very much a retirement village meets social housing. Not too bad, but enough of it. And all I could afford was a $300,000 house in what is known as the avenues. They were very rough, but I did see a lot of upside to the avenues. That's because walking distance to the shops, walking distance to the beach. So that made sense at the time. I don't have the property and I'm glad I don't anymore. So I sold that in about 2021. So I think I held it for about 8 years, probably 8 years too long. But at the time, it was the first time I had seen significant uplift since I'd had the property. And that was because we had that like COVID boom. Yeah, so offloaded the property, which went on to fund other purchases. So I sold at the right time because I think I sold it purchased for $300,000, sold for about $585.
So you made some cash.
Yes, but, it's just over that period of time, you obviously would, if you do it strategically, you should be earning a lot more than that.
We all had our time all over again,
Yes, but I was a young girl. So that was probably number one. And if I look at it now, it has not gone up much in value. And that's because, we had the COVID boom and then the property market fell in those seaside and regional locations around Victoria. So I definitely sold at the right time. Yeah. Made a little bit of money on it, but definitely don't hold it. Glad I don't. And did you want to know my second purchase or are we just going with the first? Yeah, so second purchase was, again, Rosebud.
Double down?
Yeah, double down. But it was actually quite a strong purchase because it was a 4x2.
Okay.
At the time, it was off market. And this is so before,
Yeah, off market.
Yeah, but the agent who was selling it, I had worked with previously. It just...
in their office. Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so it wasn't staged.
Yep.
It wasn't furnished. So it just looked a bit like a shell. So I think I paid $450,000. That would be worth around about 9-ish now.
Wow.
So
Do
yeah.
you hold that one still?
I don't, unfortunately.
Do you regret selling it?
Yeah, I do. I do regret that one.
Yep.
There's a couple I regret. Another really good one that we had that I regret is one in Carrum Downs. So obviously that is such a hot market now.
Why did we sell for funding something else? Was it for a reason or just because you thought you captured growth?
Yeah, so I think at the time, less knowledge, to be honest, and it's less knowledge around structuring and being associated with an investment savvy broker.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was about kind of buying, selling, moving capital around to make better decisions, better purchases, which we have done. And, everything I've done, it's worked out for a better reason.
Yep.
But if I had have known then what I know now, Carrum Downs property I sold about 7 years ago, but it's continued to grow.
Perform.
Yeah, I think I only held it for maybe 18 or so months and made maybe 180,000 or something. So it was good. Yes, but it's just such a shame because now it's worth so much more. But
and you try and buy back into that market again.
And so this is what I always say when I speak to clients. Like, number one, you need the right team behind you. Like, having an investment savvy broker is just so vital to your journey. The structuring is so important. And I say all the time, 1 in 10 brokers are actually investment savvy.
Themselves, absolutely.
Yeah, so many brokers, anyone can write a loan, but to have someone who's actually knows what they're doing, it's just hard to find.
So if you're not getting the feedback that you're expecting to, go and chat to another broker, right?
100%. I felt like one of the first questions I say is your broker investment savvy? And if they kind of go, and I'm like, no,
that means
not.
no.
You don't have a strategy.
Know.
Yeah, you'd have a strategy. You'd have structuring ideas. You'd have all of those things in place. If you have to stop and think about it, I tell them straight up, you don't have that.
We know the answer is no.
Yeah.
What are your views on the owner-occupier? Like, does that live as part of people's portfolios? Rent vesting's a term that gets thrown around all the time. What is your take on the whole rent vesting versus owning an owner-occupier?
Yeah, so I think both have their merit, but I do believe that having an owner-occupier, especially before you've really grown your wealth, it's just a blockage, really.
Why?
Because it's a huge amount of capital invested in the one property that, particularly if you haven't created enough capital to begin with, it's stuck in one property. You're probably more than likely not in a market you want to be in. When it is time to sell and upgrade, you're in the same market, but all of that capital there, that should be, I shouldn't say it should be, but if you invest it correctly, that's your money working really hard for you in a number of different well thought out areas where you're going to see significant uplift. If you're buying an owner occupier in just the one suburb, you're lucky if that property is going to see, 5 or 6% capital increase per year. And that's luck if you do. You know what I mean? Because it's not strategy. It probably won't see that much, to be real. So instead of putting, 2, 3, 400, whatever you have available into the one property, deploy that in different assets, get that working for you.
And ever come back to the owner-occ? Maybe not. What are your long-term views with it?
Long-term views, I think it has a time and place. So I think ultimately that will be my goal, for example. We did have an owner-occupier. We turned it into a investment, and now it gives us a lot of freedom because that property, we purchased it for about 1.2 million, and it was a blockage. That being leased out, we rent something now beachside with a pool, and for less than what the mortgage was there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So eventually, once I have millions of dollars, I'll be able to buy the beachside pool, the beachside house with the pool, but it needs to be mostly purchased with cash.
Yeah, with a much lower loan position.
Yeah. And until that time, no, it doesn't make any sense. But I'm not going to stop investing until that's what I can have. That's what I want.
Wonderful. And so are you seeing that lots of clients come to you with a particular mindset in terms of, I want to come in and I want to buy multiple acquisitions, or are they just coming in thinking about this very next property purchase? Do people have much foresight in terms of scaling a portfolio, or are they mainly just coming saying, Madeleine, I've got $700K, I want to buy one property?
Yes, so I do get quite a mix. I don't have a key demographic in terms of who reaches out to me. So I have a lot of people that are quite young, and obviously they're on social media and they'll say, you know, I want to build a portfolio. I want to build a sizable portfolio. So I have that level of clientele. Then I do have people that are in their 30s and they're like, oh, we're thinking about reinvesting, but we own. What should we do? So then it's about building that roadmap with them.
Yep.
And then I do have the older clients, some that have established portfolios and some that are like, yeah, we've got the owner occupier. We almost own it outright, but we want
investments.
Yeah, we want to get our money working for us. So different people and different views.
And so right now, you seeing like that you've got like a sweet spot in terms of your typical acquisition band, or is it really just going to be client dependent?
Yeah, so it is client dependent in terms of if they're starting a property portfolio or if their risk tolerance is very low. And I go through all of these things with the client, but mostly speaking, it's great to start out with a cheaper property purchase because
what's cheap for you?
Yeah, cheap for me is around about that $600 to $650 mark. You can still get some like quite quality assets in established areas around Melbourne and regional Victoria. When I say regional Victoria, I'm talking about Geelong.
Yep.
So you can get some decent assets in those locations where the rental yield's still quite high. We can achieve a 4% yield.
Okay.
So, you know, you're not going to have huge out-of-pocket costs, and that lower entry-level property is going to allow you to get to your next quite quickly, especially in these growth markets where the fundamentals are similar to other suburbs where, you know, we've seen 20% growth. So they're the type of suburbs that we try to look at. So I know that they're going to get that growth. It's going to enable them to get to the next property and they're not hitting a borrowing
capacity
ceiling. Yes. Whereas then I do have clients who their risk tolerance is a little bit lower, or they do have more established property portfolios, and they're better to be buying like an $800,000 asset, which is what we help them with.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. And is it the case that we exclusively help people to get into these kind of price bands, or will you help people push beyond $1 million if they came to you with a budget of more than that? Or if I had $2 million for argument's sake, and I say, Madeleine, what am I doing with this $2 million capacity? Like, am I cutting that up into 3 acquisitions? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I guess it just depends on different things. It depends on their existing portfolio. If they have, I'm sure if they have $2 million to invest, they probably already have an existing portfolio. So to be seeing where everything sits and how to best support that. But sometimes it's not necessary to spend the full amount, is it? So it depends on the client. It depends on where they're at. And then putting a brief together with them, forming a strategy.
Yeah, beautiful. And so we're acquiring these residential assets. Are we ever doing anything to kind of value add along the way? Do you employ particular strategy to try and increase the rental income or to gain some capital appreciation quickly? What's your thought on the whole value add space?
Yeah, so great question. And I think there's so many different ways to do so. I think a lot of people bang on about, you know, granny flats and things like that. Yeah. I'm not a huge fan. I think there's such significant outlay from the get-go that it's not super appealing to me. And I think you can see such excellent capital uplift if you're buying correctly in the right location. And if you do find something undervalued, again, you know, people talk about buzzword off market. If you have the right agency connections, like the right agent relationships, you are going to get some really good off market deals, not the type that, you know, those big brand real estate agencies are putting out in group WhatsApp chats because they're not off market. Yeah. They're marketed correctly. Yeah. They're just not on realestate.com.au as yet. Yes, exactly. But if you're buying the right property off market and it does have that opportunity for a little bit of uplift, you can see huge uplift with minimal cosmetic work. So I love properties like that. You're going to see huge.
What are we doing? Like, is it a lazy floor plan where you're squeezing in an extra bed? Like, what's the usual cosmetic uplift look like for you?
Yeah, so I don't really see that as a cosmetic. I do see that as a little bit, you know, there's a bit more involved. For me, a cosmetic is paint floors, potentially a slight upgrade to the kitchen, nothing too significant.
But what are we spending, like sub 20K, for example?
Yeah, I would expect to spend somewhere like 5 floors, 10 paint, 8 to 10 kitchen. Okay, that's what I see as a cosmetic uplift. Yep. I do get a lot of people come to me these days that are looking to do property flips. Okay, so like obviously there's a lot of groups at the moment that are doing flipping courses. Yep. There's decent money in that. Like my husband does do some property flips. Okay. We settle on one this week. And
as in you're buying or selling?
Yes, that we're buying. Yep. So we're settling on one ourselves this week, and there is a huge instant uplift of around about 380,000.
Wow.
So there's a big difference from the get-go. So that will have minor cosmetics done to it, but people often come to me saying, can you purchase properties for us to flip straight away? And I can't. They take so much time to source, and I actually don't do those. So my husband does those because they're very timely, and they're direct from vendor, because obviously an agent is going to let it go for that cheap. So yeah, I think there's a lot of money in cosmetic and renovation and things like that if it's done right. But also something I see people do so wrong is not understanding feasibilities. They need to be so tight. And when I say tight, like even in development and things like that, I've seen some people's idea of what a feasibility is, and they're very broad in terms of it's like stamps, purchasing costs, they're not tight. And I think a lot of people don't make a lot of money these days in things like renovation and development because they
from the outset they've got the numbers wrong.
Yeah.
But they sound so sexy and they're marketed to as in like, oh, you can make a couple $100,000. I get the appeal.
Exactly. It sounds very sexy.
I get the attraction.
Yeah. But the numbers aren't tight enough.
And so what's the tip for them? Go and gain some specialized advice before you.
Yeah, definitely. Get specialized advice. And if you don't have a really in-depth feasibility from the get-go, and that should include like insurances, every single holding cost, like down to photography and all of those things.
On the way out. Yeah.
Yes, because all of those things can be overlooked, but all of those things add to the cost. So it all needs to be taken into account. If you don't have a feasibility that tight, you're already set up for fail from the get-go.
Do you see that most clients kind of come in and when you're kind of chatting long-term strategy that they want a certain number of assets? Like you hear this, I need to have 10 properties or I need to have 15 properties in order to achieve a really nice outcome. Like do people come to you with this mindset around what they think they might need?
Yeah, so like a preconceived idea as to bigger is better. Not necessarily. I think people these days come quite open-minded, which is good because I don't think you need that many properties in order to grow wealth. I think that's an administrative headache. And you're probably, it's just, I think it's so unnecessary. So from your point of view, what number of assets do you think is ideal for most people? Let's say high income earners.
Yeah, I'd say probably somewhere between 3 and 5.
Yeah.
Is probably usually enough to get people to like a $100,000 to $150,000 passive income number.
Okay, yep.
If you give yourself enough of a timeline, like if you're talking about like a 20-year horizon, like if we're talking into a 20, 30 something, which they probably would have a couple of decades of investing, somewhere between 3 and 5 assets, usually enough to get them to that end number.
Yeah, okay.
So it's definitely not this 35 properties in 18 minutes that you would have seen on a book cover in an airport terminal somewhere.
Yeah.
I genuinely think, and all the modeling that we typically do with clients, you can see that it's going to require fewer assets than that. And it's about the quality over the quantity.
Yeah,
like for example, that whole, you need to own 5 properties or more or 6 properties or more to be in the top 1% of property investors. Yeah, but what are the dollar values behind those properties? What's your portfolio size? Is it 3 properties worth 10 million or is it 8 properties worth 1.5 in total? Because I know which one I would rather have. I'd rather have fewer properties with the higher portfolio value.
Yeah, and I think there's so many people that are buying, these $500,000 assets all around Australia.
Even less than that.
Yeah.
We got plenty of people that are buying a couple $100,000 as the buy-in price just to kind of...
Just to get in and accumulate the numbers because then they can swing it around and say...
Exactly, it's a bit as an ego boost, right? But that's why I found it really interesting. We ran some numbers in on this game plans testing around 6,700 users. And like these are property investors, right? If you're on our platform, you're into property. So this is kind of like the top 1% of the top 1% of investors and testing across 6,700 users. What puts you at the 1% of property investors is actually having a portfolio value of $12 million, not having 6 properties or more, because we didn't care about the number of assets you had. It's what's your portfolio size.
Isn't that a change in perspective?
Massively, right? Top 5%, $5 million portfolio or more. Not having 4 or more properties.
Yeah, that's so funny because everywhere you see, there's so much online.
I read something this morning and heard something yesterday in 2 different publications all about being that top 1% of property investor, having the X amount of number of properties, where we're actually more dialing into reviewing our users. It's the portfolio size.
It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Massively.
Yeah.
Talk to me about residential versus commercial. Are you interested in commercial at all? Not really?
No, and I'm not, because I haven't transacted in commercial enough myself to be able to have knowledge to share with people. So I'd made so many purchases myself before I started as a buyer's agent in the residential space that I was able to confidently help and advise people. And I've been working in real estate for many years. I actually did work in real estate when I was a lot younger as a commercial property manager, but it's still not enough.
Okay.
Like I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not going to just throw a dart and hope for the best. So I don't.
Do you think that it has a place in people's portfolios at a certain point in time?
100%. Yeah. 100%. I think once you get to a sizable enough portfolio, not in terms of numbers, in terms of dollars, 100%. But I think as well, I see a lot of people purchase commercial too early on. And I just think that's not right. Yeah. So I think everything needs to be timed well.
What about when scaling a portfolio? Is it like where all of our loans have to be P&I or IO? Like, do you have a philosophy around which avenue is best when we're looking to scale the portfolio?
Yeah, so from my point of view, obviously I can't give financial advice, but I do tell clients that what I see best is interest only until such time that the property can kind of wash its own face or it's neutrally geared, and then you can change it over to P&I. And that's so that you're able to minimize holding costs so you can still have room to live and expand.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you think?
Completely agree. And we've actually just recently, anecdotally, built this into the platform where we're actually saying P&I rollover suggestions. So you can come in and we'll use modeling to go in 2032.
Yeah.
If you rolled all your loans over to P&I, you would actually be, like what you said, self-sufficient from a cash flow perspective. So that might be the right point in time to do a rollover.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, 100%.
Ultimately, I still think that some people will end up doing a bulk up some pay down of debt anyway. Like if you're acquiring assets over the next 10 years and you want to hit your retirement goals in 20 years time, you're probably going to end up doing a bit of a bulk lump sum pay down.
100%, yes.
Whether that be liquidating one of the 5 properties that you accumulate, whether that be your savings accumulate over the next 20 years where you can come in and you can wipe your debt out drastically. I still think that some people do some form of a bulk lump sum pay down. I don't think people are just going to carry these P&I loans, hold them for the 30-year loan term and then eventually pay them out in 2060.
I agree.
Because I think they're going to want to retire the debt out sooner, especially speaking to young, motivated investors like you and I would be speaking to every day.
Yeah, 100% agree.
What about the approach of, and I'm pretty sure I already know what your answer is going to be. If I had myself a deposit I had myself a 20% deposit on an acquisition, would I be cutting that up into 2 10% deposits, or am I better off sinking that in as a 20% deposit on one asset?
So I think it depends on your positioning and how comfortable you are. Obviously, it's going to change your holding costs a little bit, not dramatically, but it depends on where you're at. Because if you're early stages, don't use your whole 20%. No way. Like I personally would be splitting.
And scaling.
100%. Yeah.
How are you finding clients go with the whole, because you mentioned holding costs there, right? And pretty much anything that you'd be buying now in Melbourne, pretty much, well, basically anywhere in the country is going to come with some form of negative cash flow with the rental yields 3 point something to maybe mid 4 and the interest rates close enough to 6%. How are you finding clients coping with the negative cash flow position? Maybe not necessarily for property number 1, but they're starting to jump into the next acquisition and the holding costs increase. Is there like a hack or a trick, or is there something that are getting your clients through those negative carries?
I don't know how to answer that because most of the people I deal with, they're quite ready to carry that
as in they've got buffers or good incomes to come in to support it.
And when I speak to them, everyone's ready to go. So I don't really hear from people that are like, oh, we want to, but we don't know how, we can't. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't, and a lot of the holding costs, sometimes they're often scarier than they really are. Do you know what I mean? So they're fairly easy enough to build in to your budget. What do you think? I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, because people come in and they see this, it's going to cost me whatever, $20,000 per year to hold, but then we're not looking at any negative gearing benefits if the property comes with any depreciation, if it's been renovated in the last however many years. So some of these kind of things are to offset some of the losses, but the most common one is cash buffers. Yeah. So actually having a cash buffer in the bank and modeling in and kind of coming in and going, okay, if it's going to cost me $15,000 per year to hold from a cash flow perspective, well, then I make sure that I've got that in cash reserves 100%. And then some to hold myself through that season. And I know that my rents are going to increase in 12 or 24 months time. And if anything, my loans are going to come down or stay the same. So as your rents increase and your loans come down, or if we get an interest rate cut at some point in time, who knows, the holding costs become a little bit easier to carry. Yeah.
And so when I deal with my clients initially, we do model some of these scenarios as well, some of these numbers and what that might look like when the rent comes down, if interest rates go up or down, just so there's a little bit of an idea there.
And then just point them back to the broker. Like if you're thinking about going P&I, chat to them about what other strategies you have. Like broker X, tell me about my rates and repayments going interest only. Could that help me through a season if the cash flow is tight? So obviously, again, just referring out to those industry professionals to make sure that these clients can afford that carry during that period of time. Yeah. But usually, and I'd hate to generalize, but like that first period is usually a bit of a hard slog in terms of the negative cash flow. So when we're accumulating, our cash is going towards, instead of building up the offset account, it's going towards the next property deposit. And while the rates and the yields are where they are, it's going to come with a little bit of negative cash flow. And then what we're usually seeing, and obviously it depends on the client, but after that first 8 to maybe 10 years, the portfolio becomes somewhat self-sufficient from a cash flow perspective. The next decade gets that little bit easier. And the following decade, it's kind of like, okay, this is why I got into this whole investing story if we're simply talking about that buy and
Exactly.
hold route.
And I think, it's long-term vision, obviously. And not only that, when you're watching your property grow significantly in value, you're seeing that capital growth. It's like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. So your 10,000 per year outgoings. Yeah, it's not nice, but I mean, my property's just gone up $150,000. That's the cost of doing business.
Who wouldn't cop that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really, really powerful as well. I think that gets lots of investors through their season of going, okay, if it cost me 15 grand, but look at my 65K uplift, I'm 50 ahead.
Yeah.
And my 15 grand comes with some negative gearing benefits or whatever it may be. I think that will kind of get them through to the other side.
Yeah, and I think people who get really caught up on those small numbers, property investing is probably not for them. There are, not being rude, but there are a lot of stress heads. And if you are a stress head and you're going to get caught up on these little things, just avoid it. Do you know what I mean? Because you have to go in with a view of the bigger vision.
And I think that's kind of really interesting. And that's maybe why people might come in and kind of employ the services of someone like yourself, because I imagine for most investors just trying to do it themselves, they do get caught up in that kind of analysis paralysis and looking really too deep, because there are just so many data sets and there's so much information and podcasts and YouTube videos to kind of gather the information from. There's like too much noise in my head. I need someone to come in, sit me down, cut me through the noise and actually hold my hand on the journey. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, when you are in the process of trying to educate yourself on investing and you're listening to all of these different people on social media and podcasts and things like that, chances are you might not use the data yourself. If you do use it, you might know how to read it, things like that. So you're getting your information from all these different places. You're 100% going to experience analysis paralysis, like you just said. Your head's going to spin. You're going to have 20 different ideas of where to invest. And when people come to me saying, oh, like, where should I buy and things like that, it's so specific to you and where you're at in your journey. So just listening to where so-and-so is buying, it's no good for you. So
Exactly. Like they might have a portfolio of X number of properties, or they may have holdings in every other location. So now it's their time to go and buy in a different spot. And then you're just hearing that one little bit of information. Oh, I need to go and buy in location X because that's where they are doing it.
Yeah. It's probably not right for you.
There's a lot to kind of grasp about. Are we buying everywhere? Are you specific to a certain area?
Yeah, so I tend to follow the market a little bit. So like 24 months ago, for example, I was buying heavily in Queensland. Okay. And then I think I was definitely one of the first to start buying into the Melbourne market because I'm located in Mount Eliza. I was so close to Frankston. I could see a lot of those fundamentals there that were really strong for growth. I know I was definitely one of the first to be buying in Frankston North. And it was people on my social media platforms were like, oh no, don't do that.
Criticizing you.
So much criticism. But, there was so much money being invested into the Frankston Council. Logistically speaking, it's close to Melbourne CBD, it's close to the beach, and we were securing properties for high fives in there. Like you just couldn't do that many other cities in Australia. So I started buying there. That was amazing. So just focusing in the Melbourne market for now, for the most part. I do buy some interstate properties still, but it just depends on the client and the client brief. But for the most part, Melbourne and Victoria is so strong right now. It's great to focus on.
What are you seeing moving forward? Like I know no one has that crystal ball, but if you did have that crystal ball, like what are your views for Melbourne? Because there is a lot of talk and hype at the moment with what may be coming for Melbourne. What are you kind of seeing on the horizon, medium to long term for Melbourne?
Yeah, so medium to long term, I really do feel like Melbourne's just getting started. When we have a look at some like macro statistics in terms of Melbourne's capital city growth in comparison with other capital cities, it really needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Melbourne is such a large area. And we're taking into account some of these like house and land package areas out in, West Melbourne, for example, that should not be
captured in the data.
Exactly. So ignore the macro data. I think from a micro point of view, there's some suburbs and locations within Melbourne that are going to do so well. We've already seen that over the past 12 or so months. I had a discovery call yesterday with a Sydney client. I get a lot of my clientele is from Sydney, and they were like, oh, we just don't want to buy in Melbourne though. So,
why? What's their objection?
A lot of people still have that, I guess there's been a lot of media and things in the past that Melbourne and Victoria, we've got, higher taxes, rental reforms, like all of those things. It's just a really bad place to buy. You want to avoid it. And then when I had a
What's the counter argument to it?
Well, I had a good discussion with them and I explained that, as I just said, ignore what you're seeing in terms of capital city growth. Some of the suburbs we've been buying, and this is the price we've been buying, we've been seeing like 35% growth over 12 months in some of these suburbs. Wow. That's so much more than the, the data that you're looking at in comparison to other cities. So everything needs to be considered from a micro lens. And on top of that, Melbourne is such a huge thriving city. We've had some of the strongest migration that we've had since, COVID times. I think strongest migration for the whole of Australia. It's going to do really well. We're just the beginning of the cycle.
And so do you think you could, maybe the answer is no, but do you think you can throw data at a dartboard in Melbourne and do well?
Oh gosh, no,
Or do you
no.
have to be very specific?
You have to be so specific.
Right.
Yeah. So although I'm in Melbourne and I buy in Melbourne, I'm probably buying in 4 or 5 suburbs at a time.
Okay, so that few.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that obviously, goes to show the point that you do need to get more granular than just
100%.
Melbourne,
Yeah.
generally speaking.
Yeah, there's some very scary suburbs out there in terms of the data.
What about, we kind of mentioned regionally about Geelong, but is that the only place that we're kind of focusing in on regionally, and why Geelong at the moment?
Yeah, so I have been buying in Geelong for about 6 to 8 months now. It started out as one suburb because I was watching the Geelong market for the past couple of years, and a lot of other investors and buyers agents were buying in Geelong, but I could see that the data still wasn't strong enough to buy there, and rents were actually declining in some suburbs, some of the bigger suburbs there that were, investment suburbs where people were buying. So that just didn't make any sense to me. So it finally looked like the right time to start buying there. So I'm very selective as well about what suburbs I buy there. But from a $600,000 to $650,000 price point, there are some strong assets in some suburbs that have really good data. So it's very specific, as I said, as to where I will buy over there. But example, I just had a property go unconditional that we purchased for $545,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a brick 3-bedroom on about 600 square meters. And if it was slightly updated inside, and I mean the guy that I purchased for, he's quite young, but he's going to do a little bit of work with his father there.
Okay.
That's a property where you could spend about $12,000, and if that went to market, slightly updated inside, that would get about $630,000.
Wow.
So yeah, there's still significant uplift in some of those unrenovated and renovated properties there.
But again, being quite selective with the types of properties, and you mentioned there you kind of very clearly specify brick versus a weatherboard home as well.
Yeah, but I'm not. It depends on the property and the location, because I'm not somebody who's like, I only want brick.
Yeah.
But I know it is a favorite, and and I know that people do love and appreciate brick houses.
People tend to, but in some areas, no. Like some people love the weatherboard cottage character look of certain properties, and in some suburbs, especially in Sydney, like it's almost preferred over a brick home because it fits in with the character of that location. Like a brick home would look weird because they're all 1910s build cottages, and that's the kind of the look, and people restore them and make them look all wonderful and beautiful.
That's interesting
nowadays as well. Just for people outside of Melbourne, and I don't know if you could you give like a Geelong equivalent in other locations? Like, is there like I'm thinking about it, is it perhaps from my perspective, maybe like a Wollongong of Sydney? Because what are we from Melbourne if we're talking about Geelong? How far?
Yeah, so Geelong is probably about 50 minutes from Melbourne CBD, but understanding that Geelong has its own city there.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's on the water, so it's
got that lifestyle appeal.
It does, yes. But for me, there's a lot better opportunity over this side of the bay if you're 780 up.
Gotcha. Okay, but there's a certain price point.
That's it. Yes,
that makes sense down here. But if you don't have that budget, then you might consider.
That's right. I do. So I'm in the southeast suburbs, and I do love the southeast suburbs, and that's because most of the suburbs around there, they're over $1 million for the median house price. You're on the water. The beaches on the southeast side, in comparison to Geelong, from what I understand, are a lot nicer. So Geelong beaches, they just don't have the beaches like they do on this side. Schooling, Chadstone Shopping Centre, largest shopping centre in the Southern Hemisphere. There's just so much more to offer on this side. So that's why I'm very specific about price points as to which is better to buy.
Yes, gotcha. And so we've come in, we've kind of sat down with that client, we've bought property number 1, we've bought property number 2, we're kind of scaling this portfolio out. Is there ever the right point for them to pivot altogether and, okay, I'm going to now liquidate a property for whatever reason, or we primarily want to be focusing in on the buy and holds for the most part for our clients?
So I think buy and hold always, provided it's the right property purchased in the right location that's going to continue performing, which is obviously why that's where we come in as a buyer's agent. But if you have an existing one, I tell clients all the time in some of my initial calls, I can see that, what is that property? Where is it? It's not like I take a look at the data with them and I just say, it's half okay for now.
But at some point?
Yeah, short term, like the data's okay, but look at the long-term fundamentals.
What do those properties look like?
Yeah, so I actually spoke to someone the other day with one. So if it was a property in Sunbury. Okay.
Yep.
Sunbury people are like, yeah, it's good to invest. It's fine. Like right now, the data's okay for a short term, but it's surrounded by so much land that can be developed. So the moment those building approvals go up, vacancy rates go up, all of those things, from a long-term perspective, where do you really see it going? So it's just too much unknown for me. Personally, I wouldn't invest out there. I like to buy in really established locations. This particular property was a townhouse. I just think just offload it. While right now the data's half okay, offload it while there's that scarcity. There was low listings and things like that. Offload it, use that money and go elsewhere, somewhere like a better property, better location. So
And
that's
so
the only
obviously
time.
liquidating would give them the cash increase, but does it do anything else for them?
It could free up serviceability as well if it's in their personal name. So looking at all of those things, I just think that's the only time it's a good idea to sell down until you reach your goals, which as we spoke about earlier, if it's, your PPOR for your family, things like that, hold off until you're ready to do that.
Yeah, beautiful. So from that perspective, it's more about the opportunity cost. Is my money better invested here, consuming X amount of my borrowing capacity, or could those funds be better deployed elsewhere?
Yes.
Do you find that for the most part the clients probably no, but there's like that whole sunken cost bias where people are like, I invested there, it's going to turn, it's going to do good because I'm so invested there personally.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit of an emotional thing, doesn't it? So there's actually somebody else that reached out to me. I looked at one of his properties. I think he had a property out in Clyde and he purchased it there because obviously it was such an upcoming area at the time, new, shiny, they're building new things here, new shopping centres, like it must be good. There's people coming here, it's going to be good. And the property had done really well for him so far. He has seen capital growth. It's always been tenanted, things like that. And I said to him, look, the fundamentals beyond that are not great. We've got really high vacancy rates, huge building approvals. While you're up right now, get rid of it, okay? Just get rid of it and use the funds to buy elsewhere. So he's sold that. And it's just about making better decisions.
And he was okay about taking that on the chin going, yep, I'm going to.
Yes, I think initially sometimes they're a little bit like, oh, but it's done well so far. And then he reached out a month or two later. So yeah, some people get a little bit emotional and if it has done well so far in terms of numbers, you've paid $350,000, now it's worth $500,000. People will be like, oh, but it's done well and that's good. That's take it and run while you can.
Do you have any examples of properties that have done not so good? Because both of those there for clients that the clients that have exited, but the properties have done okay. Is there anyone that's come to you with I bought this property and it was just, I don't know what I was doing. I shouldn't have done it, or I shouldn't have, for example, you had with your own, I shouldn't have sold it story, or has anyone come in with a horror property?
Nothing that springs to mind, but when I was doing valuing, I would do some CGT reports. So they're just really basic valuations to help with capital gains tax, and you could see purchase price and value now. And so when I would look at mostly apartments in Melbourne in the CBD, and that's a story we all hear time and time again. It's just that oversupply issue that property price had gone down 20,000 in 8 years.
In 8 years,
yeah, it's just such a large holding time, and
of course, and you would have seen so many of these.
Yeah, but they might be like, oh, but I've had 7% yield.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I spoke at an event on the weekend on Saturday. And it was a really nice crowd. It was everyone was really lovely and there were some great questions. And one lady's purchased a property because she purchased it for $480,000 and the rent is $460 per week. And she's kind of asking have I done well? And I was like, there is so much more to this. And $50 a week, let's just say if you're up.
Maybe not even.
Yeah, that's it. I'm not even, just in general, if you're in a position where you've got a high yield and your gross yield is going to be different to your net yield as well. So if your net yield allows you to make, let's say even $150 a week, that's not making you rich. No. That's not changing your wealth position.
It's not increasing your borrowing capacity either. It's giving you $6,000 worth of servicing. It's going to do nothing.
Put that in a piggy bank, okay? Yeah. And use your money elsewhere. So yeah, really bad decisions in some of those investments that I've seen.
So do you still use your property valuer brain when you're kind of assessing deals for clients? Does that still work? I imagine subconsciously it would be, right?
Yeah, of course. When I look at comparisons and things like that, I have a really good eye for comparable sales and seeing where there's good value for sure.
That's wonderful. I always want to kind of round the conversation out with the one bit of advice you could give. Maybe they're a first-time investor or maybe they got one property. What is that bit of information or insight that you can give them, encouragement perhaps to go on their way and continue building out a property portfolio?
Yeah, so I think as we spoke about at the beginning, having the right professionals behind you, and sometimes that outlay to begin with, like a buyer's agent, for example, it can be like, oh, I don't want to spend that money, I want to save the money, but it's not what's best. And I think, the right broker, investment savvy broker, so important If you have a broker and they're not putting a strategy in place for you and talking to you about different structuring ideas, well, then you're with the wrong broker. So yeah, get the right team behind you, and what feels like significant time, effort, or outlay right now will be so much worth it, so much more worth it when you look back in the next 12 to 24 months.
And I mean, I know people already know how they can, but where can listeners or viewers of this go and get more Maddie in their lives?
So IG, TikTok,
What are we searching?
Madeleine Roberts.
Just Madeleine Roberts?
I
not
think
Madeleine
so. Maybe
Property?
Madeleine Roberts Property. Is it? I don't even know.
Just search Madeleine Roberts and it will come up if it's
Hopefully
Madeleine
just look
Roberts
for my
Property.
face.
If you see this, then you're in the right spot.
Yeah,
You're in the
yeah,
right
okay.
spot. Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking your time to come in and sit down the couch and chat everything property.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really looking forward to coming back in and having property chat number 2 moving forward. And maybe we can kind of see how the Melbourne market has performed in a few months' time or perhaps next year. So thank you so much for coming in, sitting down and joining us on the couch here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again.